the owner of X, formerly Twitter, of course, has a huge following on the platform, over 100 million people. So many questions around, the responsibility or irresponsibility, perhaps, of his commentary here. But first, Michael, keen to hear your thoughts on the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, clearly being a little bit evasive in responding to a reporter who asked twice, in fact, about his response to what Elon Musk has had to say. And we heard that clip where he didn't really answer the question.
Well, I think he's right. I mean, it's such an absurd thing to say and so utterly contemptuous to talk about possible civil war in Britain. That's never going to happen. But if you start replying, verbally to every single insult or thing that comes up that way, you'll get into a tit-for-tat slanging match. And of course, Elon Musk is the sort of person who will never let something die. He'll come straight back with another kind of provocative comment. And I think the Prime Minister was absolutely right, just to sort of lay it to one side, not respond, not give it the dignity of a response, and focus on what he's trying to do, which is to calm things down, get the people off the street, get the police safe and able to do their job, and show that the country is disgusted with the sort of behaviour we've seen in so many towns recently.
Hannah, your thoughts on this? Is the Prime Minister right in kind of almost dodging some of the comments we've heard from Elon Musk?
Well, I think Michael's right. I think it's a kind of responsible dodge. I don't think he sounds evasive, but I think there is something utterly ludicrous, not only in the Musk comment, but in the idea that, it's a summer, it's a silly season. We've got this hugely serious thing going on, but the silly season aspect is that with the Tories otherwise engaged, the richest man in the world, this tech zillionaire, has decided that he will be the unofficial opposition and speaking from a position of absolute ignorance. I mean, there is no racist myth he will leave unmined. He's, by bringing up Rotherham on X as well, something that happened a long time ago now, and feeds in again to this far right paedophile establishment conspiracy theory. I mean, it's just ridiculous attention seeking. And actually, a couple of hours ago, Musk launched this antitrust suit, and it does seem that this sort of taking on of governments pretending to champion free speech. He's done it with spats with the EU and Brazil and Australia. He does this as a publicity campaign. And this is probably about this Texas Federal Court Global Alliance for Responsible Media case that he's launched. But it's a publicity campaign at the expense of our very precious democracy and our national security. So in that sense, I think as a former head of prosecutions, Starmer might actually be being quite responsible.
Yeah, in not responding to that question that he was
in ignoring
asked,
him for the loon he is.
Yeah. That said, Elon Musk has a huge following, as I mentioned, on the platform that he owns, Michael, over 100 million followers. And just to give you a flavour of the range of opinions that we're having on the programme tonight, one listener has been in touch, sending a WhatsApp message to 0333 003 2353. Michael says the people who are really responsible for the rise of the far right are the governments since the 60s. They've all consistently ignored the wishes of indigenous British people on immigration. You take the majority for granted at your peril. Elon Musk clearly speaks to someone.
Yes, I think he does, unfortunately, but he speaks in a very inflammatory way. And I think part of this is because he's himself very worried that there is a determination now to clamp down on the kind of stuff that's being put out on social media. This is the real problem. It's being instigated by a lot of very dedicated fanatics, mostly on the far right, but not all, but mostly, who are using social media without really any attempt to monitor or to block what they're saying. And of course, X being one of the big platforms, it would be quite harmful if Musk was ordered to take much, much closer control of what's being said, and in fact to kick people off much more easily. He would see that as a threat to his commercial interests. So I think he goes on and on about free speech and starts comparing Britain to the Soviet Union, which is utterly ludicrous. But I think everybody realises there must be some kind of responsible monitoring to stop this, social media platforms are basically what everybody under a certain age where they get their news. And we know you don't need it to be a platform for disinformation.
The clampdown on social media, though, that many are calling for here, Hannah, I can't help but wonder, actually, will it make any difference if you were able to wave a magic wand and close down social media sites? I can't see that really putting an end to some of the really horrific scenes we've seen in recent days. There is clearly rage, there is clearly anger, and social media is just the platform by which people are talking about it. It will happen anyway, won't it?
Well, I mean, we talk about a kind of long, hot summer uh, paradigm, and I before I was a journalist, I was involved in looking at different historical cultures, and often in London there would be apprentice riots, or in different parts of the country there would be riots, and you're right, they would use whatever technology they had at their disposal to allow themselves to engage in this kind of yobbery. And very often as well, it would be a reaction against minorities, and a sort of with a kind of jealous economic aspect as the supposed key, but actually it's just about chaos, boredom, jealousy, yobbery, being young and dumb. I mean, although actually we've seen in this case that the yobbery is across age groups. So yeah, it is something that always happens. I do think that I mean, we've talked before on the program with Kate about this Telegram platform. I mean, that sounds worrying. I think they've finally started removing some people who are inciting violence, but Telegram has become a platform for the far right, and that's a worry as well. That it's not even. I mean, in a way, X is almost mainstream. Something like Telegram is where they're all going now. But Michael's right. There is a lot of cynicism about who's grabbing these audiences, and how these things will be achieved.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very disturbing. It's very disturbing. Now on a Tuesday night, being told that Wednesday is the next big night. I mean, Yobbery appears to have a couple of nights off and then regroups, and then there's this flying picket aspect of where is it going to pop up next in the country.
Elon Musk decided to pick this fight with Keir Starmer, jumping on accusations the Prime Minister has adopted a two-tier policing system. This is in response to the riots we've seen of recent days. But he implies that police have responded more harshly than they did to pro-Palestine protests in recent times. Earlier in the programme, we had the anti-racism campaigner Assad Rahman on the show. He shared his thoughts on this accusation of two-tier policing. Here he is.
It's the most ridiculous comment ever. And of course, it's not borne out with any data. You only need to look at the reality of stop and searches for young Black people, young Asian people. You only need to look at the experiences of deaths in custody. You only need to also look at the experiences, for example, of policing in those instances that you mentioned, the rise. The courts were open 24 hours a day. People were given long sentences. So the idea that there is somehow some softer policing when it comes to the Black community than other communities, I think is just absolute nonsense.
Michael, what do you make of his comments?
Well, I think it's absolute nonsense. I agree. I don't think there is two-tier policing. It may be that in certain instances, I mean, some of the demonstrations in London, it's been quite difficult to allow peaceful demonstrations while keeping away troublemakers. And there have been instances where a large, say, pro-Palestinian demonstration has been perfectly peaceful with a few people stirring it up. And then it looks as though the police are indulging them, or else they're picking on those who are stirring it up. I mean, the police are in an almost impossible position, whichever way they try to make sure that they keep a balance. Obviously, each demonstration, there's a preponderance either of, say, far-right racists or of Asian people, say, trying to defend Asian property and mosques and things of that kind. So whichever way they go, it looks as though they're favouring one side or the other. Well, the police regulations and the police ethos is absolutely clear. They police for all the nation and for all people. And whatever the law is, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. It doesn't matter what colour you are, then they clamp down. Now, There are things, particular areas, for example, knife crime, where certain communities are more effective than others, say the black community in central London, well, outer London actually. And the police have been working with the black community with their consent to say we will particularly target this area because this is where the people are being hurt and this is where the crime is. That doesn't mean that it's a two-tier system. They're just trying to make sure that everybody is protected.
Why has this idea of two-tier policing really taken hold, in your opinion, Hannah?
I think it plays into racism. I mean, I was very interested in the message you read earlier from one of the listeners by the use of the term indigenous. And that sort of immediately makes me think, well, hold on, who are the indigenous people? I mean, are we, the Beaker people came over here in the Bronze Age. Did they become indigenous? Are the Romans, the Normans? I mean, I don't know that we have indigenous. That is a worrying term to me. Similarly, I'm from Birmingham originally. I spent the first 18 years of my life there, and I go back fairly often. And one of the things I love about Birmingham is it is so beautifully multicultural. And I will be talking about whatever festival's going on with whoever I meet. And it is a proper friendly melting pot. And yet, I'm always being told that, we hear from America that Birmingham is a place of no-go zones and all this nonsense. And I think simply this two-tier thing, it is another way of racists creating a kind of buzz phrase. Whereas actually it's very much the other way. There is still a lot of people still have worries about racism in policing.